Tristan is live with us from Canada tonight. So welcome, Tristan, to the thriving metropolis of Clatskanie, Oregon, sitting just inside the mouth of the Columbia River. So welcome the rest of you folks here tonight, Friday night. Amen. Our second Friday night of the month. Friday night number 2. Sunday, Dan will be bringing part 2 to the message that he brought last Sunday. And then I think probably next Friday, Esther will be speaking. Exodus 33, verse 18. Exodus 33, verse 18. It's very familiar. And you might know, since Friday night's themes are fire and glory, that at some point in time we're going to grab this verse, right? Moses is on the mountain, and he said, speaking to the God, "Show me your glory." He said, "Show me your glory. Not let me feel your glory, but show it to me." It indicates that God's glory is not just something that we can feel, but it's something that can be seen. Have you ever thought about that? Journey with me, would you, through about 30 books of Exodus, about picking it up about chapter 3, and we're going to go all the way up to 33. But I'm not going to read all of those scriptures. We're just going to journey with me because it blows my mind. Of course, it doesn't take that much to blow my mind. We're going to journey with Moses, because Moses had experienced more than any single person in the Bible, other than Jesus, of course, but any regulars. The things that Moses had experienced are amazing. Now, I try to put myself in these places, and I think, how would I act or react in those particular places when he's tending sheep? He's been doing this for 40 years. I mean, you get pretty well set. Your habits get pretty well set. You know, you just know how to do it. You've been doing it for a long time. It's just like what's happened in the church world. That's why I like what Steve Hill, he hates it when things are cookie cutter the same. He likes change. We don't want to be stuck in a rut. Years ago, before we even went in the ministry, we had a pastor that defined a rut as a grave with both ends kicked out. So we don't want to be stuck in a rut. But we easily do, and we follow a pattern. We've done that for years. And so, understanding Moses has done this and traveled this circuit for years. And sometimes you go along, and it's kind of like when you're driving. We've talked about this before. And all of a sudden you realize you're 20 miles further down the road and you don't remember the last 20 miles. How many have done that? I've done that. It's freaky. It's kind of scary. You said, how did I make it this far, not have a wreck, run off the road or something? And so I'm just trying to bring this down, because Moses was just like you and me. He was nobody, he was experiencing life where he was at, just doing his daily, sometimes, most oftentimes, mundane work. And all of a sudden, he spots a bush that's burning. Now, a bush that's burning may not, in the desert, be so unusual. A lot of times that would happen, that because of the heat and the oils in that a bush would burst into flame. But this one was different. This one was burning, but it wasn't being consumed. And then he hears a voice. And Moses, all of a sudden, what's that? Yeah, turn around. Hello? I mean, this is not, we forget, this has not happened before. He's experiencing this for the first time. This is important for us to understand these things. Mighty experiences. And this is kind of what I'm talking about when I'm thinking about pastors and churches that bring them into an experience, an encounter that they've never had before, that will radically shake their world and change their life, change how they do things. And this is what was happening here. And this burning bush that's not being consumed. And then hearing the audible voice of God speaking and telling him, Moses, take off your shoes, for the ground upon which you stand is holy ground. Now, I heard the audible voice of God one time, and I told you about that. It was years and years ago. It was 6 o'clock in the morning. And I heard the voice speak. I was sure, I thought my wife was said something. She said, Lauren, are you going to lay in bed all day? I mean, it's 6 o'clock in the morning. And I jumped out of bed, my feet are on the floor, and I'm sitting there kind of wide awake, and I turn and look, and my wife was sound asleep. Didn't hear a thing. But it literally shook my world, and guess what? I wake up every morning at 10 minutes to 6. 10 minutes. I didn't want to hear that voice again. That's the truth. 10 minutes to 6, I'm out of bed every morning, except Sundays. Because Sundays I'm out by 4 or earlier. And so he hears this voice. He's not heard this before. These are experiences that he's not had before. And then now it gets down even more personal than that. He says, what's that in your hand? It's a rod. He says, throw it down. And he threw it down, and all of a sudden it becomes a serpent, and my eyes would be saucers about now. Whoa. And then, if that wasn't bad enough, then he says, pick it up. Who, me? You did that. You get it. I mean, when I was a kid, we just dealt with garter snakes. I remember we had a little trash barrel in our backyard, and I remember having a garter snake on, holding it up over the fire, watch it recoil from the heat of the fire. It was cruel. I let it go, though I didn't throw it in the fire. But I don't like snakes. My brother and I were walking back from picking berries, and a snake crawled across his foot. He dropped the barrel and yelled and ran. I mean, there's something about snakes that people don't like, and he tells most pick it up again. And so he wisely, his brain's working, he picked it up by the tail, and it became a rod again. Now think about this. A burning bush that's not being consumed. A voice, an audible voice that says, take off your shoes, so the ground upon which you're standing is holy ground. Now throw down that rod and pick it up again. And then he says, now take your hand, put it inside your bosom, put it in your cloak, and take it out again. Well, this is a game. Maybe they need to put this on Facebook. It's crazy when you think about the things that God was doing and how, I mean, he was radically shaking Moses' world. This is a kind of church service that he'd never been in before. This is kind of an idea of what God can do if he chooses to do it. He's not forgot how. And he takes his hand out, and he's white, he's leprous. Now that would panic anybody. And so God says, now stick it back in again and take it out, and it's made clean again. Watching this journey of the things that he went through. And then the plagues over a nation. Now I'm not sure, sometimes I think about the 10 plagues, we could almost get that and understand that to a degree, but the fact that they hit everywhere but Goshen, that kind of boggles the mind. But those 10 plagues that invaded Egypt, there was blood, frogs, lice, flies, pestilence, boils, hail, locusts, darkness, and death, reducing the strongest nation of the then known world to nothing. I mean, to watch that, to see that, and to be a part of what's going on. Not a gun was fired, not a spear was thrown, not an arrow was shot, but a nation was reduced by plague after plague, miracle after miracle, and Moses had a part. He would go up, and it happened. And wouldn't this blow your mind? Maybe not yours. Okay, it'll blow my mind, and I don't have much to blow, but so it wouldn't take a lot. But I'm looking at these things, and I'm thinking about all of these things that's taking place. And then they come up to the sea. They left, Pharaoh let them go. They leave Egypt. They come up to the sea. And Moses turned to God and said, you didn't tell me about this. Did you ever know that God doesn't have to clear everything through us? That He wants to show His power and His glory and surprise us? And so they get there, and everybody's doing what we like to do, and what everybody does, they're complaining. I don't like the worship. I don't like the singing. I don't like the drums. I don't like the guitars. I don't like this, and I don't like that. I don't like it when you go after 12. And all of this murmuring and complaining that goes on in the body of Christ. Amongst the Jewish people. And God says, take that staff and stretch it forth over the waters. Now Moses is starting to think here, I don't know what's about to happen. God didn't tell me. So I'm going to start doing what He said, because I noticed early on, if I do exactly what He said when He said it, something's going to happen. I don't know what it is. Maybe a fleet of submarines are going to surface and come up and take us. I don't know. Maybe there's going to be a bridge. I don't know. But I'm going to do what God tells me to do. That's what sometimes we second guess God. And when God impresses something on us that we back away from, well, that's just me. And so Moses takes this staff and he's stretching it out over the waters. And when he does, as he's doing this, the cloud, and we forget that cloud led them from Egypt to the Red Sea. We think it didn't appear to them, but obviously it was already there, because God, and this is an amazing miracle, God lifts the cloud, puts it between them and Egypt, puts them in the fog so they can't see anything. How many have seen heavy fog? I actually still to this day remember going to work one day early in the morning. It's like 4 o'clock in the morning. I'd get up and go to work before school in the wintertime, rain or not. And the fog was so thick. I'm riding my bike. I have to ride my bike for just over a mile to get to where I meet the guy I work for. And the fog was so thick, this is not exaggerating, I went off the road. You're that close to the road, moving that slow, I went off the road into the ditch. It was that heavy of a fog. And I turned around, and I had not even got half a block away from the house. So I turned around and went back home, because I thought, if I can't get a block away, how am I going to make it a mile away? I'm talking about thick fog. It's like a wall between them. So he sees this. He sees this cloud move over back, drop down behind him. Now Pharaoh can't see them, but they can't see Pharaoh. Sometimes what you don't see, it's what we create in our mind. That's what fear gets us. And then he's still holding this rod, and this had to be an amazing thing. The waters, the winds start moving on the waters, and they start parting. Now, I've talked about this before, because I'm telling you, this blows my mind. It seems like God went down here. He parted the sea, then He parted a river, then He calmed the storm, and then He just walked on it. He said, I'm done messing with it. I'm just going to walk on it. I love it. I love it. And He watches these waters part. And it says, unlike what the movie do, the only one, Cecil B. DeMille in the original Ten Commandments movie is the only one that did it right. And how they said it was jello or something that he made. But in his movie, that the walls of water, there was 2 walls of water, it was on both sides. And the ones after that, there was a wall of water on one side and it drained out, and the ground had puddles all over it. But that's not true. They didn't do a sound biblical movie out of it because the Bible says they walked across on dry ground. But think about this. What would you do? You're watching, this stuff is going on. This is amazing. This would boggle my mind. Any one of those things would go carry me for the rest of my life. Right? And if I saw and experienced any one of those things that we've mentioned so far, I'm good to go, folks. I mean, listen. We didn't even have anything like that. We just had a vision given here on a Sunday morning that lasted for 40 minutes and it changed your life. You have never been the same since. None of us have ever. And that was nothing compared to this. Think about it. And so they're walking through and they get on the other side. And then he turns back and here comes, God lifts the cloud. Pharaoh and his armies are coming through. They get into the water. And look, they're getting a little bit close. I'm telling you, if you think the enemy's chasing you, just trust God because He knows how to. He knows He's a mechanic. He knows how to take the wheels off your car. And He took the wheel. I mean, that's, that I've seen pictures on Discovery Channel. They've actually had divers in the Red Sea, and they've got pictures of it, of chariot wheels buried and covered with barnacles and half buried in the sand at the bottom of the Red Sea. Have you ever, any of you seen those? Prove that God took the wheels off their chariots and they're still there. And then the waters close up on them again. I would probably be still standing there and I'd build a church. I might call it the Church of His Presence. But these are phenomenal things there. And then they keep going. They've been going without anything to drink for 3 days. And they come to water, and the water's bitter. The waters of Mara. Mara means bitter. And I love this because I think about it this way. There's a tree. It doesn't even say there's a forest. He takes a tree that was planted there the day the world was created. 3,500 years ago, approximately, God planted a tree for one purpose. Just like He built the road across the Red Sea, it was always there. He just protected it from being destroyed by man, because man's good at destroying everything God's done. You can see that today. They're working fast and furious to destroy everything that God did. The human race, the atmosphere, the produce we eat, everything. They're changing everything because they believe they can do better than God, but they know they can't. So God put that there and preserved it for this moment. One moment in time, one event. And He had that tree waiting there. And He tells Moses, take that tree and throw it in the water. And so he does. He doesn't know, remember this. He's just moving in obedience. Remember the word obedience? He's moving in obedience because he does not know what God is going to do. God doesn't clear it with him first. He just does it. Moses, you just throw that tree in, but Moses is learning some valuable lessons here. And throw it into the water, and all of a sudden, the bitter water is made sweet. Think about this collection of miracles that God has been doing along this way. And then this one. We're up to chapter 16 now. They're hungry. They do what Christians do the most, the best. Complained. Every time. I'm telling you something, folks. We need to learn something from these and the times that we're going into right now. We need to learn to trust God. I pray that this will be a Goshen. That God will have grace and favor on us. But we need to learn to trust God for provision. We do what we can do. But if God tarries for 2 years, we don't have enough stored for 2 years. Nobody does. it would be spoiled and rotten and bad before that time would pass by. But we have to do what we can do and trust God for the things that we can't do. And so they don't have food. And it's snowing, but wait. This is a desert. That can't be snow. And they pick it. How many people used to pick up the snow and eat snow? I used to eat snow all the time as a kid. You know the old saying, make sure it's not yellow snow. We know all of that. And it looked like snow. It was white, and it's called manna, which is the perfect name. What's this? That's what. That simple. What's this? And for 40 years, every day they had manna. We saw somebody posted the heat that's hitting everywhere. Somebody posted a picture in the heat. They have a mailbox out of out of bricks rather, and it goes up and has a rounded top, and inside this structure is their mailbox. And the heat was so great, a woman took a loaf of bread and stuck it in her mailbox, and in 45 minutes baked it complete. That's heat. That's heat. They're in a desert. And is it fresh bread? Who doesn't like fresh bread? We all like fresh bread. And this come down, I mean, whoa. You see this coming down and feeding the masses. Everybody was fed to full. And even on the day before the Sabbath, there would be an extra that would last them for 2 days. It says only take enough for the day, and then there'll be enough that's going to have a cloud burst. So there'll be enough for 2 days, and gather that for then. I mean, think about these things. Would you please, so that I know you're with me. And then they came to the mountain. And God comes down himself on this mountain. And they're looking at this mountain. And the cloud, the lightning, the mountain is shaking. It doesn't say there wasn't an earthquake. Understand it. The ground that they were standing on was perfectly still, but the mountain in front of them is shaking. These are amazing, incredible things that we're watching, that he's experiencing, that he's seeing, and he's a part of these things. Now, how many would just like just one of those? Be a part of just one of those things. Would that not be cool? Would that not be awesome? Would that not change your life? And then to see this mountain shaking, and then God saying, Moses, come up here. No way. I mean, there would be the fear of God on me. And then he's up there. He's up there for 40 days. They thought he was dead. Of course, we know that Israel backslid, built idols and the golden calf. Moses came down and went right back up. So ultimately, Moses went 80 days. I like the way Donna typed my notes. She got a stutter on her finger. And it came out 880 days. That's close to 3 years. That would be a real miracle, wouldn't it? But 80 days without food, without water, up there in the presence of God. Now I want you to think about all of this. The burning bush, the snake and the staff, the leper's hand and then the pure clean hand, the plagues, bitter water turned to, I mean, he's watching this, he's experiencing this, and then he makes this statement. This prayer, after following all of that, I mean, we've left some powerful services. And we said, wow, God was in the house. Was that not awesome or what? And we talked about it for days afterwards, what God did in that service. God just showed up. And we was, oh God, do it again, do it again. And Moses makes this request, and you would think that would be his request. Oh God, what you did last Sunday was so awesome. Do it again, Lord. With everything that God did, all those miracles, his prayer request was this: show me your glory. I can see what you can do. Oh man, oh man, oh man. Because we're more interested in what he does than who he is. When he says, show me your glory, I want to know you. I want to know the kind of God that you are that does all of this. That would be amazing. We want all of this. But if we get his glory, don't we then get all of this? But it comes with the territory, as it were. Because as we talked about last week, there's a process that we have to go through. There's the altar of repentance. There's the sanctifying altar of gold brazen laver of the cleansing ourselves of all of the stuff. I mean, we get inundated with just stuff being in this world. Sometimes you just feel dirty. Got all of that. We're not even in the doors yet. But then when we come in the doors, well, I'm not going to rebuild and redo all of that stuff, but we see all of that, all the things that we do to get there. But when we get there, we arrive and then we leave and say, oh, that was awesome. But what if God says, wait a minute? God, show me your glory. You know, I'm gonna skip way ahead because God's glory shows up over and over again. But can I skip to the last one in Revelation? Because this blows your mind. In Revelation 15:8. This is in heaven. He's having a revelation, a vision. John is having a vision of heaven. It says, the temple was filled with smoke from the glory of God and from his power, and no one was able to enter the temple till the 7 plagues of the 7 angels were completed. The glory filled the house. Now get a grip, because we think, wow. And God does. God knows. If God showed up with all of his glory, we'd be dead. You look at the story, these are degrees. We see degrees and measures of God's glory. But there's a level of intensity of God's glory that neither man nor angels have ever seen. Think about this. And it's revealed in this verse because you go back to Isaiah in chapter 6, and he's caught up into heaven on the year that King Uzziah died. I saw the Lord high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple, and the angels cried, holy, holy, holy. And then we zoom ahead a few decades, and we see Daniel is there. Daniel's in the same place that Isaiah was at, and the angels are still there crying, holy, holy, holy is the Lord. And we zip ahead a few decades again, or 1,000 or so years, 1,500 years, a few years, and John the Revelator, he's up and he sees the angels are there. They've been there from the beginning. These angels are gathered around the throne, ever beholding the face of God, and they cry day and night, holy, 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 holy. And it just reverberates through the heaven. But all of a sudden, there's a level of intensity of God's glory and presence that even these angels that have been beholding the face of God couldn't bear up under it, and they had to leave the presence of God because of the glory. Wow. I got goosebumpies thinking about that. What am I saying? In all of this, What my wife said probably 25, 26 years ago, we need to have a divine dissatisfaction. Never become content with what we have, because there's always more. God can never be drained of all that He is and all that He has. The church has lived on the crumbs that fall from the table. Though they've been good to get us to where we are, they're not good enough to get us to where we need to be going. Are you with me?
Yeah.
If we understand this truth, we don't have to worry about Pharaoh's army. We don't have to worry about provision. We don't have to worry about all of these things that everybody's worrying about, and that when things begin to darken all around us and much of the church world is going to be swallowed up by the world in fear, they're going to fall away even more than what they've already fallen away. We'll be able to stand because we understand God never leaves us nor forsakes us, and there is more for us than there are for them. God's glory. We're talking about fire and glory these weeks. I don't want fire and glory that ends at the end of August. I want to live in fire and glory. I want to live every time we gather in the church, and any time the body of Christ across America and around the world. It's time. We need a change. We need the fire of God. We need the glory of God. We need the presence of God. We not only need to feel it, because it feels good when God's in the house, but we need to see His glory. Oh Lord, show us your glory. Stand to your feet. I just cut the middle section out, but it all saying the same thing. It just builds on the same principle. The glory of God. How many say, I just want more?
Yes.
It costs you more. You don't want to mess up in the glory. Moses did. We talk about all the wonderful things he did, but he messed up one time and it cost him. See, you don't mess with the glory. You don't mess in the glory. God never told him to strike the rock the second time. He said, speak to the rock. But Moses let his emotions take control. And he was ticked off at the people of God. He got his nose out of joint, as they would say. And in his fit of rage, he stepped into the flesh. And he took that rod, that same rod that became a serpent and came back to a rod. That same rod that he stretched over the waters and they parted. That same rod that he turned back and did it again and they closed back up. That same rod that he carried in his hand for all of those years. And God had been faithful and God had been moving. And God says, speak to the rock, and he takes the rod and he strikes it. And it cost him. Didn't cost him his salvation in this case. But oh, don't let it cost you yours. But oh, how my heart longs to see God move in the churches across America. But I know there are people hungry. And I know that what we had in church before will not suffice for the day we're living in today. I know it's going to take more. I know that pastors have got to get a hold of God and let God get a hold of them. We've got to shake our world. But we also know that if a pastor dares to mess with their church tradition, their religious traditions, we can see how that went for Jesus and the early apostles. They messed with religious tradition. But that God would put him and say, that's God. It's like when we saw the Brownsville revival. You remember about this. You remember the struggle that I had coming out of Lutheranism. Of course, I'd been out for 30 years by this time. And so I'm watching I hear about the revival and I'm thinking churchy stuff. This is the way that we do it as a church. And so revival, well, you have an evangelist come in and he preaches for Sunday through Thursday, maybe Friday. Or maybe he waits until Tuesday because we've got to have Monday. And people, after a while, they begin to decide when an evangelist comes. They don't decide, I'm going to make them all. They decide, how many can I miss and still look faithful? That's true. That was our idea of what revival was. We thought it was just extended meetings. Am I not right? And so we would go, and yeah, we were encouraged, we were blessed, they were good services, but most of the time we weren't revived because as soon as the evangelists left, we went back the same way. We were never changed. We didn't change. Everything was done the same way. That's what was in my mind when Mark Acuna said, we've got tickets to Brownsville for the revival there, you want to go? And I said, no, we can have it here. We don't have to go across the nation for a move of God. I wasn't even called a move of God. I'd never even heard the term a move of God. A move of God, we know how to do a move of man. We're good at moves of men, but we've not really experienced the move of God. And so he says, here's a couple videos that we got from there. The first one that we watched, it was good. It was a Spirit-filled Baptist pastor. He'd been trying to get into Baptist churches and preach revival in Baptist churches. I don't know how well all of that went. I don't remember his name or anything. Probably still have the video. But then they showed the one that we all know about. Honey, where are we from? And it was so loony. She was so loopy. She was so under the Spirit of God. She didn't know where they were. Her mind was she was just drunk on the Spirit. And the pastor at Kilpatrick said, asked him, where are you guys from? And she tried to come up with the name of their town, and she couldn't. And finally she turns to her husband. And she said, honey, where are we from? And I said then, that's God. It was nothing religious in that. Nothing that smacks anything of a normal church service. It was total Looney Tune up there in the Spirit of God, wiped out of her mind, so drunk in the Spirit, she couldn't even remember her hometown. And I thought, that's God. When we're willing to recognize a move of God doesn't have to fit our idea and our formulas and our techniques and all of these things. When we get to that place that God, whatever it looks like, if I have to throw a rod down and it becomes a snake, I'll throw that rod down. I'll even pick that sucker up by the tail. If I have to look up to heaven and think it's snowing and find out it's bread coming, Lord, I'm going to do it. If I have to stand over Klatskanai River with a stick in my hand, like if you ask me to, if you don't ask me to, I'm not going to do that. But Lord, if you ask me to, I have to be willing to do it, because I will never experience the glory and the power and the presence and the move of God if I don't move in obedience, even when it sounds goofy to the flesh. Are you hungry for more? Are you hungry? Don't you want to come out of these 2 months transformed, that everything is different from this time forward? Oh, by the way, I had a dream right after I had the dream of the 300,000 man armies being called out to be trained, the one that we prayed about at the beginning of the service. But in the second dream, and it's about the third or the fourth dream I've had like this, I'm standing outside and I'm looking at the Wyoming, no. Karen's been posting some awesome pictures of Idaho and Wyoming countryside. And I see this field, because I can remember blades of grass, tall blades of grass, almost like wheat, but I knew it wasn't wheat. And I could see them just slightly moving in the wind, and it was just as clear as could be. And I see a range of hills in the background, and I'm thinking, I'm seeing this, and I says, wait a minute. I'm thinking my right eye is seeing this, and I think, wait a minute. I'm seeing that from my bad eye, and I put my hand over my eye, and I could see as clear as a bell. And I knew God had restored my vision. Because my vision is not getting better. It's slowly been getting worse, because when you have some of these things, there's nothing that they can do. You can spend all you have and not get any better, but get worse. Like the woman with the issue of blood. You don't trust doctors anymore, but in the glory and in His presence, when His presence comes down, whatever's not God goes. Disease goes. Demons flee. Chains of bondage are broken. Lives are transformed in the glory. Can you imagine? Moses was never the same, and all it took to change him and to begin to do all the other things was an encounter at a burning bush. Gather into the altars. There's an interesting verse when the sounds of the horns on top of the mountain were blowing. It didn't say they heard them. They said they saw them. They saw the sounds of the shofar. Wow! Folks, there's more. There's more than what we've ever known or experienced. Lord, take us beyond the edge into the depths of your experience, of your glory, Lord. Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord. Thank you, Jesus. Oh, Lord, we need more. Lord, in the day in which we live, we need more. More of your glory, more of your presence, more of your power, more of your Spirit, more, Lord. You used Moses and just showed him everything they need to live in victory, to make it through every test and every trial, every situation. Show us your glory, Lord. Yes, Jesus. Yes, Lord.